So my name's Neil. I'm a software engineer here in the Valley. My story of actually getting involved with FaithTech is really directly tied into hack. I actually, as I was moving out here, one of the things I asked my pastor back in Texas is looking at a career transition. What sort of opportunities are there for Christians in technology to really partner up with missions and ministry organizations? And so he connected me with some of the folks at Indigenous and put me in touch with them. And then back in 2018, as they were getting ready for Hack, I kind of asked, and I said, hey, who's coordinating Hack in Silicon Valley? There are a few coders out here. It seems like something we should participate in. And Simon, I think I may be paraphrasing it slightly, but Simon replied and said, "You are." And I said, "Well, awesome." But so, really super excited about a lot of what Indigenous is doing, and in terms of coordinating and getting people together really on a global scale to write software, bring folks together for technology. We're coming to this meeting. We're going to be talking tonight a lot about the upcoming hackathon. So coming up October 16th through 18th, we're going to be holding a hackathon in partnership with Indigenous. And so tonight we just want to talk with some of the folks who are coming out. And this year, we're going to be focusing on the global theme is hack for the unreached, taking the gospel to where it's not. And as we thought about that on the FaithTech leadership team, we kind of said, what does that mean in San Francisco? One of the, I think, the great opportunities of cities is it's a gathering point for all over the world. It's a gathering point for people within the U.S. who, in many ways, the gospel is present, but it can still be very hard for the gospel to reach in to where they are, whether they're living on the streets of San Francisco, or whether they're, up late at night munching on the snacks at a Google snack bar. There are lots of things that keep the gospel from going out to the cities. And so one of the things we're going to be focusing on this year is taking the gospel to the urban core. And what are some of the technologies? What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the challenges that we need to be doing that? We'd love to have you guys come out October 16th, 17th, and 18th and participate in that hack with us. Enough from me. I'd like to, start off with Simon and just get you. Do you mind kicking us off and telling us a little bit of background, how you came to help co-found Indigenous, and just a little bit about your vision for Hack?
Sure. Thank you, Neil. Thanks, everybody, for joining this meetup. Good to meet you all. I live in Singapore. 2 times in my life, I lived in the US, once in the West Coast in California, once in the East Coast in Orlando, Florida. 2016 came back, and I've been here. I'm still working with a lot of good friends and part of the larger network of Crew. I've been on staff with Crew for 23 years now. I know I look like out of college, but this is thanks to the Asian genes, I suppose. I have 3 teenagers at home. It's a different situation now, but I did study electronic engineering when I was in Polytechnic, did business management in my degree. I did not become an engineer. Instead, the Lord had other plans as part of joined Crew as a missionary. Did a variety of things working with students, but also primarily with the creative. I was leading the music ministry and then the creative communications. And that's when I was introduced to this, internet ministry thing. And I'm like, what's that? I have no idea. But it really helped began to show me, say, there's something here we need to pay attention to. And this was more than 10 years ago now, and trying to figure out what's my part. As God would have it, I eventually played a part to help launch Indigenous in 2013. I'm not an entrepreneur at all, a businessman like many of you here are. So in some sense, I'm like, God, why would you use me, to do that? Indigenous, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, started because we sense many Christians feel powerless to help people know Jesus, right? So that's kind of the driving force. And the church desires to use digital in some form or another to help fulfill the mission God has given, but doesn't know how, right? So Indigenous actually wants to empower the engaged believers on digital missions by equipping them with digital solutions and offline strategies. And that is resourced by its collaborative community. And that's, folks like you guys, right? So in some sense, you can say Indigenous is a great commission accelerator that catalyzes the spread of the gospel to where it's not. And I love it that Neil painted that theme for us, because that's the driving thing. We know that where the gospel is not could be our backyard, right? Could be right, next door to us. It doesn't have to be a far-flung place. And we get a chance to do it. So we want to rally this global community to engage in digital missions. Then because we need to collaborate together, we want to bring the church to collaborate and then make Jesus known everywhere. And hashtag is just one of that expression, right? It wants to catalyze, especially the talent. And then working with, the project providers, you can say that, or the partners that has problem statements, whether it's youth with a mission or InterVarsity or any other local church or ministry that wants to do something, but they can't quite figure it out. Yes, hashtag is the nickname for the hackathon, and sometimes we've called it, hack for missions as well.
One of the things that I've found most interesting about this particular event is its global nature. And what is it like to run a global hack? What sort of participation do you have from other cities? Are there any sort of projects that come out of this that you would point to as being real successes?
What's it like to run something like that? Oh my gosh. I would start by saying that it's humbling. As I said in the first part, I did not expect I would be doing this. I thought I'd be leading Bible studies, with students, and, more. That's where the Lord had me start. I get to meet people much like you guys. God has somehow written technology or digital into your story, and he's ignited something. Maybe you read something, you saw something, or you participated in a meetup or event or hackathon, and you're like, I think I need to pay attention to this. I'm meeting folks like that, all the time. Even while I was preparing we were working towards Hack 2020. I'll tell you one quick story. This guy that I met from Buenos Aires, he heard about hashtag or Indigenous through a friend in China while he worked in China. And, it's kind of one of these fascinating stories of like, how in the world did you hear about this? We don't make any advertisements and things like that. This guy and his team is now one of the most active folks, and discovering that when he first heard about it, he's like, how come I didn't know about this? I got to do something, And just like you, Neil, we met, we chatted and say, you're it. You have the heart, you have the vision. We want to come alongside. We'll guide you with whatever frameworks and planning guide that will help empower you. But you get to rally the community together, work on projects that really contribute to missional outcomes. So just a quick one, I just mentioned that, a lot of these come from the developing parts of the world where they don't get a chance to participate in global events like that. Many of them have much less resources than, we have in the more developed cities and countries. Nevertheless, just as passionate. They love Jesus, and they love figuring out digital ways to bring the gospel to the places the farthest unreached places. So I think your second part about some projects that jump out to me, I'll tell you a couple of stories. This one has to do with Youth with a Mission. They have a ministry called Tamar Village, and they brought this problem statement to the hack in 2017, I think. Starting 2017. One of the lead persons there, her role is to try to rescue the women and the streets. She would literally walk the streets trying to find opportunities to have conversations with the girls as well as with the pimps. But the problem was that they are no longer there. But that doesn't mean the sex trade has ended. They begin to ply their services online. And she's like, what do I do? I think I know some of the places where they are, and I think I know some of the code words they use, hashtag this and that. But beyond that, I don't know what else. So she presented this challenge, help me to reach them and help me to stop that sex trafficking, or at least prevent some of these things from happening. Guess what? The technologists got together and said, I think I know what we can do with this. And they came up with some really cool stuff, apart from a strategy that is trying to tell stories of the girls. There was one that's it's really cool, where they design a web crawler, they use neural networks, and they started with a few of the keywords that was given and then it, associated with others. Now she has something to look at that gives her a better understanding of what's going on. How are they connecting? What kind of topics are they talking about? And she has a way now to minister or engage with the people. So to me, this is a really cool one and has continued since. Some of the volunteers have continued in a very informal basis. This was with Salvation Army. They've been using Facebook to try to engage with people with depression or they have questions, and then design a chat board to try to engage with people. And we even work with the Samaritans of Singapore and just other social agencies that also care about the issues. So this is something that illustrates the power of when people with ideas come together, and with the right technical skills they can do so much.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Those sound like super interesting, super exciting ways to think through how to take the problems that people are seeing and translate those into technology and explore those in creative ways. Just a couple of minutes, we turn it over to Alex and Tim, but could you just offer kind of your perspective on what does it mean to take the whole gospel to the urban core? You've touched on this a bunch of different ways. Can you summarize that for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel pretty inadequate to answer that, but from my perspective, for my own city, one of the things I'm observing right in my city with the COVID-19 situation, some of the people who are most affected are the ones that for a long time they're invisible to us, to be very frank. I feel slightly ashamed to say this as a Singaporean, but the people who built this city, you can argue that actually were not the Singaporeans. I mean, literally, the buildings, the facilities, and the mega structures, they are migrant workers, the Chinese, the Bangladeshis, the Indians, the folks from Pakistan and other places from South Asia. There are thousands of them, in tens of thousands in Singapore. But we actually don't really see them until COVID hit. The situation in the dormitories was bad. Actually in the community spread sort of got controlled, but then it started to take root in the dormitories, and thousands of the workers were affected. Long story short, many of them were isolated and quarantined, cannot go to work. So we can see construction sites outside my door literally stopped, no sound, like eerie, and suddenly, the city is aware, oh my gosh, we have people who were neglected and we didn't even know. And the church, in a sense, woke up. It's not that we never done anything with them before, but the church began to realize we have missions opportunities right at our doorstep. And what are we doing about that? I'm sure there are many other stories I didn't get to hear about, but I know there's some churches that have gotten together, and you're not talking about building complicated technologies. It's just using what God has already given. They're stuck. They are on Facebook. They're on social media. They need people to chat with them and minister to them. They need to be pointed to the truth and to real hope at the right time. How do we do that? So there are many, many opportunities, we can do. We have sites that talk about hope that, points every Bengali, that is in the Bangla language, Bengali. But we also have churches rallied themselves into groups to be befrienders, ready to chat on WhatsApp. And we have since heard stories of people take steps of faith and people coming to Christ. And of course, we work with the Tamil church, with the Hindi-speaking church, and the Bengali, speakers as well. But here you have it, it's right here in your city. What would God open our eyes to, and how can we take simple steps? Sometimes it would include, creating platforms and fun, cool, innovative ways. But sometimes it's really just, pressing in to the problem and coming alongside other ministries and say, hey, how can we help? And what might be some, digital angle or technological solution, idea that brings it forward, and as you put it so beautifully, taking the whole gospel to the urban core.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's so easy to overlook the vast communities that are drawn to our country. And I know, having grown up with a missional focus, I'm always thinking overseas. I'm always thinking, let's go, let's do something. It's so easy to overlook the people in my backyard that easier to reach out to. But in reality, oftentimes I find that I've just been neglecting them. I've not been paying attention to the people around, which is a huge call to look around and to think about what we're seeing around us.
Thanks, Neil, and thank you, Simon, especially for joining us from Singapore and sharing your experiences. Now we're going to transition to talking about what does bringing the gospel to the urban core look like, especially in the Bay Area, as well as in other international urban areas as well. And we're lucky to have two experts and practitioners from Youth with a Mission who are here to kind of share their expertise. And they're also one of the partners for this hackathon as well. A lot of these themes are all kind of connected. A lot of this initiative is connected. I'm really excited about this just mainly because, all the trends that you see definitely show that the world's population is becoming more urbanized. Obviously with COVID, it'll be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. There's just a lot of driving forces that are bringing people to cities, to urban centers. And there's also something unique about the urban center that many of us here call home in the Bay Area. It's often a global cultural center for creatives of all types and has driven massive economic impact worldwide as well. And then in addition, it goes without saying that many people here continue to build things that impact the way that the world operates, the way that they consume information, the way they move around, the way they travel. And so that's one of the things that's kind of kept me here, despite all of its flaws, because of how urban it is, because of how much of a global marketplace it is, and because of the opportunity for folks who work on things to really positively impact the world and bring the gospel in many ways, as some of the examples that Simon has shared, even through WhatsApp. So today, we want to really address two topics or focus on kind of two key themes. One is, how do we bring the gospel to the urban core? And then the other is, how might we live out the whole gospel to serve those who are marginalized, especially, in our backyards, especially in neighborhoods like the Tenderloin. So we're, again, lucky to have two experts and practitioners here. And we'll have Tim Svoboda address this first topic. And then we also have Steve Binnquist, who will address the second topic. Let's dive right in. I'm starting with Tim. Quick intro, and then I'll let you kind of share more. But Tim is currently the International Urban Missions Director for YWAM and serves also as a city coordinator for YWAM San Francisco, as well as the entire Bay Area. But he's also spent, over 25 years in India and has also had a lot of experience in other international urban cities. So we're really lucky to have him here share his experiences. So to start off, can you give us a brief overview of your various roles at YWAM over the years?
Yeah, I joined YWAM in 1975 and did my training in Lausanne, Switzerland as a single person. And my to-be wife was in that course. And after the course, they wanted to start a new work in India. And we both got recruited. And we jumped into a Volkswagen van and a Peugeot 404 car with 8 others, and we drove from Lausanne, Switzerland to India by car. Took us 40 days and 40 nights, and it changed our lives as we saw Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then landed in the grand old city of Kolkata, where Mother Teresa was ministering on the streets, and Mark Buntain, the great Assemblies of God apostle, was preaching the gospel, and our lives were transformed. And we've been in YWAM ever since. Most of that time in India. I became the national director in YWAM India, and then turned it over to a Indian guy, Samana Ram Prasad Dharam, and he took the leadership, and then I was left twiddling my thumbs and wondering what to do next in India. And I was in a prayer meeting one night on the east coast of the Coromandel coast of India, in a small town called Mahabalipuram, in an all-night prayer meeting. and we were praying. And as I was waiting on the Lord, somebody said, as I was waiting on the Lord, ask God for something big. And as I was laying on the floor, I said, Lord, what do you want to give me that's big? And one word came into my mind that night that I'm still working on today from 1995. And all I got was one word. And the word was cities. And from that day forward, I've been trying to learn everything I possibly can about what is a city, why are cities so important. More than 55% of the world's population lives in cities today. And it's not a Western phenomenon. It's a world phenomenon. The world is moving to cities. And we often think that missions is across the ocean and through the jungle and through the rice fields and out to the remote part. And that is mission. But the mission is also the urban jungle, where the buses roar louder than the tigers. And sometimes the difficulties are more intense. Singapore is a mission field. Chennai is a mission field. Beijing is a mission field. The San Francisco Bay Area is a mission field. So that's my short journey. I was in India till 2007. And then we moved here to what I would term the hyper diverse San Francisco Bay Area. And we thought India was a mission field. And then we got slapped in the face with San Francisco. And we're finding that it's just as a challenge here as it is over there.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I imagine there's just so many stories you could kind of tell about that journey and some of those experiences. I'm kind of curious, what, both here in the Bay Area as well as, your experiences in various cities in Asia, how would you characterize urban missions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the Western theological seminaries, urban missions has been confined to the poor, which Steve is going to be sharing about, and that is mission. But Mother Teresa once said that poverty is the inability to reflect. Well, who's poor? The guy sitting in the Salesforce tower may be the poorest person in the city because he doesn't have the ability to reflect. I see urban missions as not only the urban core where it's poor, but I see the whole hyper-diverse San Francisco Bay Area. Hayward is the urban core. Strawberry Park in San Jose is the urban core. Sausalito is the urban core. UC Berkeley is the urban core. Googleplex is the urban core. The Tenderloin is the urban core. North Beach, we're working in North Beach. We have a couple that lives in North Beach for the last 7 years, Little Italy, the upper class of San Francisco. Goodness gracious, they are unreached with the gospel. Now, how we reach them or the methodologies we use are different from what we use in the unhoused section of San Francisco, but they're just as needy. I think when we think about city mission or urban mission, we need to get the chains off our minds and think about the different portions and spheres and neighborhoods. San Francisco Bay Area, 9 counties, 101 cities, 8 million people. San Francisco City, 800,000 people, 120 neighborhoods. And then you go on and you can think some more of the diversity of this place.
Yeah, I love how you're kind of thinking of poverty in a very holistic way. It's not physical needs or lack of housing, but there's all these other kind of dimensions. I imagine you must be thinking about, you kind of alluded to different methodologies to address not just like different cities, but even perhaps like different neighborhoods within, some of these cities. So can you share with us about some of the methods and maybe even specifically some of the tools you're working on to kind of address like the unique characters, the unique personalities of all these different cities and neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, Steve will share a lot from what we do down in the Tenderloin, whether it's showers or it's haircuts. You know, one of our things that we've done a lot, which we can't do anymore in COVID, is we just go out and serve hot chocolate on the streets of the Tenderloin. San Francisco, cold, foggy, people unhoused. You walk up to them, would you like a cup of hot chocolate? Rarely do you get a no from the unhoused on the street. And then, you know, can I pray for you? But, you know, can you imagine walking down the corridors of Googleplex or Salesforce Tower and saying, would you like a cup of hot chocolate? People look at you like, you know, what's wrong with you? Get out of here. So different places need different strategies. You know, we have a motto in YWAM: the gospel is always the same, but how you preach it keeps on changing. City missionaries need to be students of the context. Like Fremont, take Fremont for example. In the East Bay, we have a team that's there, and our guy there, he's working with the Afghan Muslims and other Muslims, and he's a professional trainer. And he's found, you know, that a lot of the Afghans, they're really into bodybuilding. Well, what a cup of tea for him. We put a private gym in his garage. And he works at 24-Hour Fitness, and he's helping people to tone their bodies from a Muslim background. He's an American, but he goes by, his name is Shahid, and he has a long beard. He lived in Calcutta for 25 years amongst the Bengali Muslims, him and his wife, and now they're in Fremont. And he put a gym in his garage. And those that want extra training come home for private tutoring. He's using his gym in his garage, and then after his gym, sit down and have a meal. And over a meal, what happens? They start pouring their hearts out. You know, my marriage is breaking up. I don't understand America. I don't understand the culture here. My kids aren't doing good in school. And they just start to pray together and share the gospel. And we're seeing fruit in a typically resistant place of San Francisco Bay Area. And keep in context here, 250,000 Muslims live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there are maybe 15 full-time missionaries for 250,000 Muslims. Something is wrong with this picture. And there's an opportunity here to mobilize the more than 3,000 churches in the San Francisco Bay Area to engage our neighbors with a loving God. So how we do it in the Tenderloin, how you do it in Fremont, the gospel's the same. Christ died for our sins. Repent. Trust in his atoning work. Put your faith in him, repent of your sins, and be born again. But how you deliver that in the urban context is so different. And that's why I think a lot of people get scared of city mission, because when you look at the hyper diversity of the mega Bay Area, it looks complicated. But when you zero down and you focus on a particular people group, whether it's skateboarders or it's artists or it's tech people or it's hipsters or it's the unhoused, as you zero down, that's where strategy becomes super important. And you then begin to contextualize the gospel to that particular group that you're speaking to.
You know, thanks for sharing that. And I love how you kind of point out some examples of the magnitude of some of the people groups that live in the same town and same region as we do, because chances are we probably work with one. And so we all have an opportunity. I'm reminded of the time where you spoke at an earlier perspectives class that I was involved with. And I remember you shared, you kind of mentioned context. And I remember walking away from your session in particular, coming away with a greater appreciation for the context of San Francisco and a greater love for the harvest that is here. And so I'd love for you to share about some of the tools that you've been working on for quite a while, and how people can understand and also develop that appreciation for context in the Bay Area.
Well, I think tools are super important, and I'll share a few with you. But before I get to the tools, the greatest thing, I can't stress it enough, is love. And love comes from prayer, and prayer, especially prayer walking. I remember, Simon, years ago when I was in Singapore, I taught on prayer walking in Gaylong to a group of Singaporeans who lived right around that neighborhood, and I took them out prayer walking. And one of the guys came up to me and he said, "I've lived in this neighborhood all my life, and I have never seen this neighborhood like I saw today." There is something about prayer walking that just burns. The reason I go prayer walking is so that the city goes prayer walking inside of me, so that the city tramps through me. I smell it, I feel it, I taste it, I hear it, I see it, and I weep for it. So tools are important, but tools can be very dry in the end. So let me give a plug for Steve Hawthorne's book called Prayer Walking. And read it. I think it's one of the best tools we have available to do. When we call getting to know your context, we're talking about exegeting our context. And I'll just share the screen here really quick with you. I'd love to see this type of a website just multiply. This website is called SF Exegesis. Why not a San Jose exegesis? Why not a Fremont exegesis? Why not a Berkeley exegesis? Why not an Oakland exegesis? Why not a Sausalito exegesis? Helping the church to learn and love San Francisco and reading our city as a text, so that we as pastors and Christian tech workers and full-time missionaries and laity, we're not only studying the text of Scripture, but we're studying the text of where we tread our feet every day. And we're taking the text of Scripture and we're contextualizing it to the context of where we are breaking bread every day. So you can look at this website later on. It's the only one that I know of that is called SF Exegesis. I'd love to see a Singapore exegesis, a Chennai exegesis, a Beijing exegesis. I think it's so important. And I use this saying a lot. You cannot love what you do not know. To love your wife, you got to know her history, her idiosyncrasies, her background, her family, her traumas. And the more you take time to know it, the more you're going to fall in love with it. Cities are personalities. Neighborhoods are personalities. Companies are personalities. UC Berkeley is a personality. And the more you exegete it, the more you fall in love with it. So the goal is not to know it. The goal is to love it, pray for it, and then out of that, God births strategies that are relevant and will end up reaching people.
So we'll get to our last question, and then we'll shift to Steve to dive into some of the work that he's doing in the Tenderloin. But before we do that, I want to end off on one last question around, as marketplace ministers, as professionals, working in our various fields, how can we get involved? How can we partner with you and partner with the work and leverage some of the lessons that you have gathered over the course of all of your experience?
Well, I remember one of my friends got a job at Cisco down in San Francisco. He invited me to come down. He said, "How do I get involved in mission?" I said, "Well, could you give me a walking tour of your complex?" And it was like 4 floors, and we walked. And I was just like, goodness gracious, this is a mission field. And we talked about prayer walking. I said, "Why don't you come 15 minutes early every day to your work and just walk your company. Don't go around shouting hallelujah and hitting people over the head with your big King James Bible. Just walk and pray silently. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." right here. You know, I think the church is beyond the four walls. COVID is showing us that the church isn't to be in a building. The church is to be in the neighborhoods. The church is to be in our companies. The church is to be on the street. The church is about loving our next door neighbor. And I think you guys are in positions where it's just absolutely incredible. I think, again, knowing context, there are many tools. You know, this is a map called peoplegroups.info. These are the census tracts. If you click on that census tract there, you're going to get pie charts. They're going to show you who's living within blocks of you. I've been to Fremont. I did a Bible distribution program there. Knocked on doors, and every door was a different nation. One home from Fiji, next door from China, next door from Taiwan, next door from Pakistan, next door from Afghanistan. Next door was a lady from India. And I asked her, can I share the gospel with you? She said, yes, share it. And I shared. And I said, can I pray for you? And she said, no, I'm perfectly content. She said, would you like to come into my house and have tea with your team? I said, yes. She made tea. I said to her, can I share the gospel with you again? She said, please share the gospel. I got all done. I looked at her. I said, could I pray for you? And she said, no, we're perfectly happy here. And then she looked at me, and I'll never forget what she said. I'll leave this with you. She said, can I ask you a question? I said, yes. She said, can I go to church? And I said, of course you can go to church. And then she said to me, how do I go to church? I've never been to a church in America. The welcome signs are all there, but what do I do? Do I need to bring a coconut to offer to the God? Do I need to bring money? do I have to believe the Bible to walk in the door? I sat there for the next 10 to 15 minutes explaining to her how to go to church, even though there's a welcome sign in every front yard of our churches in the Bay Area. This is the cities that we're living in today. 60,000 Afghans in the San Francisco Bay Area, 30,000 Gujaratis, 1,000 Yemeni in the Tenderloin, where we think it's all unhoused people, and we need to reach the unhoused people. But there's 1,000 people from Yemen right downtown in San Francisco. We have missions at our doorstep, literally. We need you guys to help us figure out, how do we see it visually? I think that would be a great challenge. Peoplegroups.info, sfexegesis.com. You can go to our website, YWAM San Francisco, and there's a religious map there. Here's the Bay Area. We want to try to visualize and get people to see more and more who are the unreached people groups. Here's the churches and Buddhist temples and Hindu temples and different religious entities of San Francisco. We worked on this map for a long time. It's an interactive map. But how can the tech field help us more and more to make people aware of the vision? I think without vision, it's hard to mobilize people. But if vision is shared passionately and clearly, people then start to connect dots and say, hey, wait a second, maybe I'm a missionary right here where God's put me in this place to do something and make an impact.
Amen. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that and giving us that exhortation. Appreciate, not only just the different tools and different resources in which we can just get to know our different cities better, but also just reminding us of what Jesus did in his walk and his ways of loving and ministering to people. And now we'll transition to Steve. He also comes from YWAM. He's the Director of Restoration Initiatives, which is a ministry part of YWAM. Began working with them in San Francisco since 2004. I'm really excited to hear and learn more about not only his years of experience working in the Tenderloin, but how COVID especially might have impacted that. And this is also personal to me as well. In the first years of my and my wife's marriage, we were deeply involved in different ministries in the Tenderloin. And that really kind of served as the initial foundation of a lot of our marriage. And so I have very fond memories of that experience. And also I feel like it's an honor and privilege to just have that view and lens of the city that I think most people don't ever see. And so I love to have this session dive more into your experiences and how you serve. So Steve, can you share with us a bit about yourself and how you came to Restoration Initiatives and YWAM SF?
Yeah, definitely. I was in high school on a mission trip, and we came up to San Francisco to serve hot chocolate and to do different ministries, actually here with YWAM. And I remember looking at Twin Peaks and seeing all the lights of the city. It was at night, feeling like the Lord was kind of giving this picture of every light being people, and the Lord challenging me that he loves those people as much as he loves me. And at that moment, it was this real, like this visual of lights and the city background and the beautiful view from Twin Peaks, and just realizing that my life couldn't go back and that I needed to do something to tell people that Jesus loved them. And so that's kind of my intro into YWAM. I came after high school, jumped into YWAM, and worked in our training department here in San Francisco from 2004 to 2015. Took a sabbatical year and studied the Bible in Montana, which is very different than San Francisco. In that school, just could not escape God's call for us to love the poor and the marginalized and to serve the poor and the marginalized. Just couldn't get away from it. I felt like specifically in the Old Testament, every book I read, every prophet I read, it was all about how Israel had missed loving the widow and the poor and the prisoner, and how our call as believers is to step into that gap where pain has been, that we could step into it and be healing agents of that. And then the last book we studied in Bible school was Matthew. And Matthew 25 basically says, however you love the least is how you love me. Just at that point, it was just like, I dropped my Bible. I was like, I give up. Like, this is it. Came back to YWAM after our sabbatical with a little boy, my son, and my wife and I walked into Tim's office, and kind of long story short, it was just like, I want to work in the neighborhood more. I want to work in our homeless ministry more. And Tim was going to have that same conversation with me that day anyway. So it just kind of worked out. And yeah, I just started working and kind of delving into the neighborhood more and more from 2015, 16 on, working and leading the ministry. We provide showers and a couple of different services to the neighborhood and have been for a long time.
So over the course of the time, how have you seen the Tenderloin change? I love to follow that up also with, what are some of the current challenges and needs that you see within the Tenderloin, especially in light of COVID?
In 16 years, the Tenderloin has changed quite a bit and stayed the same in different ways. I feel like the Tenderloin goes in rhythms and patterns. There tends to be a lot of people who are on the street and who are sleeping on the street to feels like it's pretty empty, and a lot of people are in transitional housing or SROs, single room occupancies. People are the city's making different steps, and it kind of ebbs and flows, as well as how much drugs you kind of see on the sidewalks and on the streets. I do think over the last few years, it feels like things have gotten worse. We've never seen as many tents as we've seen recently. I think at the height of COVID, it was 450 tents were in the Tenderloin neighborhood, a lot of them on our block. You also used to see a lot more kind of hidden. You would see people kind of shooting up or taking drugs, and now it feels like everything's a lot more upfront, like right in your face kind of deal. So I think there has been some steps over the last few years or some things, and maybe it's culture, maybe it's acceptance of things. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like the Tenderloin has kind of made steps towards poverty and people's pain being more in front of your face as I've kind of walked the streets. There's been a lot of great things that have been going on in the Tenderloin too, and I think COVID has both highlighted the amazing things and the hard things that's gone on since COVID. Like I said, we've seen more and more people with tents at the beginning of COVID. Our decision when COVID hit in March 17th, when the order came to kind of shelter in place, the realization of you can't shelter in place if you're unhoused, there's no place. And we provide showers. Before COVID, we were doing showers 2 days a week. So we're like, let's just open up for showers. And so we kind of started to explore what it looked like to do that. From day one of COVID, it just opened up. We were at one point open 4 days a week for showers. We've done around 2,000 showers since the beginning of COVID. Service has been a huge window for us to maintain a relationship with people on the streets. Like if without showers, we wouldn't have connection with people anymore. Without the ability to provide hygiene and basic needs, we wouldn't have the ability to do the relational part of people. So like I said, I think COVID has both highlighted the good and the bad. I think the good is that, man, I've seen so much gratitude from people about anything that they get and services, which has been really cool. More partnership within organizations, which has been such an amazing thing of being on phone calls and organizations being grateful for showers and us being able to be like, yeah, we're super grateful for that you're feeding the neighborhood and helping us figure those things out. So I think those things have really been highlighted since COVID.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm kind of curious, how does that differ from some of the other services that other organizations may also be providing?
Yeah, we are the only shower still in the city, drop-in shower or shower that people can use. So if you think San Francisco has between 8,000 and 10,000 homeless people, and there's one shower that is drop-in. There are some showers now connected to some of the safe sleeping sites that they've moved a lot of the unhoused to. But there's not many there. And then some of obviously people have moved in hotels or housing, there's some shower opportunities. But as far as for people living on the street, we're the only shower. I think that makes us pretty unique. I think our presence has been pretty unique as well, as far as just being open. When a lot of other organizations, for really great reasons, needed to pause and pivot, we were kind of prepared just because of who we naturally were in giving hygiene and knowing like the cleaning aspect and all of that. Like we were already doing that. And so we were able to not have to close down. And we actually, for a week, Glide just across the street, they had to shut down, and they are a major force in feeding for the neighborhood. We were able to kind of not obviously fill that gap completely, but we were able to hand out breakfast burritos and soup and kind of different foods that we had and where we had donated. So I think a huge part of what makes us unique, I think, is presence, longevity. Been here, I mean, other organizations have been here longer, but it's been just cool to be here for a long time and to see the growth of the neighborhood and the growth of people. And service, I love when Jesus says that he came to serve and not to be served. And I think the staff that serve in Restoration Initiative, I think there's an amazing heart to serve the community. And that's their focus, is to serve and not to be served and not to grab all the things, but just to really serve people. And we have one of our staff who sits with a guy who has really bad sores on his feet, and he sits and he washes his feet twice a week, and that's it. Like that's what he does. He just sits and he washes feet. And I think that again can make us pretty unique from other organizations.
I love how you kind of share this. A lot of the work you do is from a heart of servanthood. Can you describe what your approach is to discipleship and to relationships with many of the people that you serve?
Yeah, it starts with service, and it has to be built. Like everyone has a reason to come into our building. Or right now it's showers, but even before, like we were a drop-in center, we were able to point people in different directions. And so there's always a reason for a connection, and it's always like, let me serve you. Like let's just start this relationship by serving, and then it becomes like this personal relationship of like connection and a building of trust. And I've been working with a guy for a few years, and I remember this moment where he just broke down weeping in my arms. After the only conversation we had before that was about electronics and conspiracy theories, he breaks down on my arms and he just starts weeping, saying, I have nobody I can trust. I have nobody I can trust. And then from that point, and him in my arms crying, saying, I'm never going to get housing. I'm never going to get clean. This is never going to happen for me. There's too much shame. I have too much guilt. So now he's serving on our food pantry today. And then he went back home to his SRO. And like, that's, like a 3-4 year process of just connecting and being okay with being sworn at and being yelled at and called a liar sometimes, and just be like, okay, like we'll start again tomorrow. And having that. So I think our approach for sure, like, is service first, relationship. Let me make sure that you belong here. No matter what, you belong here. You belong in this family of believers. Like, you belong. And from that point, like, it's just the simple things of just being like, hey, maybe consider not smoking as much meth. that might be a helpful decision for you. And then from that point, like, hey, maybe there's some detoxes that I know. Let's go walk down to the detox and let's figure that out. And then from that, like, hey, there's some great partnerships we have with job people that are training for jobs, and let's go figure that out together. And just walking with people. A huge part of what we do is we walk to appointments, because case managers are awesome and there's lots in the neighborhood. But there's also a lot of unhoused and people they're working with, and they can't keep track and follow up. And so what we can do is simply be that next level of connection with people and walk with people to their case manager appointments, take notes for them, make sure that they can understand what the next steps are for housing, for rehab, for whatever it is, service relationship, and then just quick to forgive. It's basically practicing the principles of Christianity is what our approach is. We need to serve people, we need to be in a relationship, we need to forgive quickly, check our anger, and just walk with people day in and day out.
I love the image of literally walking alongside them to various appointments as well. You know, I'd love to hear, what is your vision of what the Tenderloin could be, especially as whenever we can emerge from, you know, our current circumstances. What is the vision that you see and the opportunities you see for the Tenderloin?
Yeah, again, for me, it starts with this service relationship piece. And I think I'm so excited as we open up and explore what that could look like, bringing people in. I came at 19 into the Tenderloin thinking that I was going to save the Tenderloin, and the Tenderloin saved me. I believe with my whole heart that, like, this is my community, this is my family. My family, we live a few blocks from the office here at YWAM, and we've become a part of this community. And so I think moving forward, the vision is to continue to empower people who are maybe right now unhoused or in transitional housing, or maybe they're, you know, just getting off of different substances, and to empower them to take steps forward in their life, and to see in relational exchange, like, hey, come staff our drop-in center. Hey, come help us with food pantry more. Come help us with showers more. And continuing to bring people into this place of dignity, continue to bring people into a place of purpose. And hopefully watching people step into more of who they really are and disciple them, and to work on character things and to champion them moving forward. My vision for this neighborhood is to see not people, I don't mind people moving in to serve the neighborhood, but I think the neighborhood has what it takes to take steps forward. The neighborhood God is here and he's working and he's doing things, not just through like missionaries or churches, but also through people who are living on the streets and people who are in SROs that love Jesus and are just trying to move forward with him. And I want to champion that. We want to champion that as restoration initiatives, is just to help them to move forward and give them that push. I've been here for 16 years and I'm not a native. Like, I'm not seen as someone who is a resident of the Tenderloin as long as I've been here, because I don't have that history and I don't have the past that gives me that authority. But I can champion people, and I think that's who we want to be as a missionary or as an organization, is a bunch of cheerleaders who are really rooting for people and doing everything we can to serve them to move forward. Practically, we really want to see a rehab. We really want to see a halfway house. We really want to see detox and rehab, halfway house. Would love to see some more deeper discipleship programs pop up. We're really excited about some things that are moving forward. We have this guy, Paul, one of our staff, who does this thing called Transform Club. We're literally right now, they meet on Sundays and Tuesdays a couple times a month, and they just buy pizza, wear their masks, and they do a quick like prayer and just connection point with people, Bible study. So we want to see more things like that happen practically, but we want it to be neighborhood led. I don't want to lead them 4 Bible studies a week. I want people from the neighborhood to lead Bible studies in the week, and I want to just champion them. So that's where we're going.
I love that. Yeah, this has been really great. So just to end this with one last question, you know, you mentioned some of these other services that you're envisioning for restoration initiatives. How can we participate? How can we engage? How can we help out? What do you need for some of these services?
Prayer, just as we continue to move forward. Even advocate for us, like if you're following us on social media or all those fun things, and as campaigns happen and as things happen, just to advocate for us. If you've got time and you want to explore, one of our passions too is to be a bridge for people who want to learn how to love the poor and the marginalized, to come and be a safe place for that. So we have a lot of places to volunteer, whether you want to come and hang out and help people with showers, or you want to come and hand out food at a food pantry, or as we can open back up again, give out hot chocolate on Friday nights. So those are some huge kind of volunteer places. Also just from a communication with, as far as our staff goes, we're continuing wanting to grow our staff and grow our skills as staff. And with that, a lot of our staff come from different places in the world, and looking at the simplicity of getting some of our staff the right technology to be able to communicate and do the job as far as computers go. And yeah, I think those are some quick ways to connect with us. Like I said, volunteering is great, and advocating as you kind of see and hear things that are moving forward with what we're doing as RI and as YWAM.
I mean, just to be very bold, you can't do ministry without property. You can do ministry by being on the street all the time, but some of the stuff that we do, you need property to do ministry. And property is the most expensive thing in the Bay Area. So that's a big challenge. And how do we find property? We were just offered a building in the Tenderloin, $2.5 million, 14 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 2 kitchens. And I'm already stretched running one mortgage with one property. So my board is hesitant to take another property. But when Steve starts talking about it needing a halfway house or a drug rehab program, you can't do that on the street. You gotta house people, and it takes property. And I think one of the biggest challenge for Christian missions in cities, not just in the San Francisco Bay Area, Singapore, Hong Kong, anywhere, it's the cost of property. So I don't know, and I'm not taking up an offering here, so don't worry. I'm just telling you guys, and I got to put it out there. We got to be real with this. Real estate is real, and real estate helps us to empower to do things that take us beyond just being on the street with people into really providing substance. So that's a challenge. The other one is the right staff. We would love to see more people join YWAM San Francisco from a tech background, supported by the tech background. It's hard to go into missions these days and raise your own finances. But those are things that I think we need to start thinking. How do we send missionaries from certain backgrounds into other backgrounds that have certain skills that can bring quality to missions so that we're delivering services that are of substance?
The other piece too that I would love to see happen is a quick reference like app or something for staff and people coming in volunteer wise to be able to connect people. Because there's times when you're doing ministry on the street and someone's like, I want to rehab or I want to detox. And you're like, all right. And then you got to do the research. And so we'd love something that's quick that we can give to short-term teams that come, or even to our long-term staff, that is almost like a resource of the services and the opportunities for people to get into detox and rehab and different long-term programs. So I'd love for something like that to be developed. There's different things you can find online, but a lot of it's like clunky and a lot of it's hard to navigate. So something that was just super simple would be amazing. And I think a huge blessing for, I know, myself and the staff, because there's so many times where we're spending time with people and it feels like every second counts when someone's ready to get off the street. And so sometimes fumbling with the research and trying to find all the different homes or whatever to get people in, as much as I know and as much as I have connections with stuff, it's still sometimes it's hard to figure that out, to navigate all of that. So that's a huge need as well.
Great, thanks for sharing that. It's very opportune that YWAM is one of the challenge partners for this hackathon coming up. And so hopefully everyone kind of hears, some of these ideas and some of these needs that you have. Just want to give a round of thanks to Tim and Steve for sharing, their insights, their wisdom, and some of the needs and opportunities for serving, as well as partnering with YWAM.